Hello ladies and gentlemen. Today on this channel I am going to be talking about a game console I perhaps do not give quite enough attention to on this video creating platform. Today I am going to be talking about the PC Engine, a system that was beloved and came out in Japan all the way back in 1987. Many would suggest that the PC Engine was the most cutting-edge games console on the market for its period, offering graphical prowess far above that of which you could find on the Nintendo Entertainment System or the Sega Master System at the time. Due to this and their moderate success in Japan, NEC had world conquering on their mind. So moving forward, by 1989, NEC were ready to launch their platform over in North America, with markets such as Canada and of course the good old USA, or bad old USA, depends on whether you come from the Middle East or not. However, with regards to this, they was releasing it kind of how Nintendo had done things in the past. They took a leaf out of Nintendo's book where they released the Famicom in a new case as the Nintendo Entertainment System, where NEC took their PC Engine and made a more Western orientated design. They released the system as the Grafx 16, putting the number 16 in the title to further brag about the system's power and capabilities. However, there was one major snag in this whole plan, because it wasn't long after the release of the Grafx 16 that the Sega Genesis, aka the Sega Mega Drive, hit the North American market. So there was an even more powerful system which came out shortly after, which many people waited for and decided to procure instead. So with the Sega Genesis outperforming the Grafx 16, it just didn't sell very well. So moving on from this, in the background, NEC also had a European release lined up. In fact, they decided to change the name of the system in Europe during this time. So it went from being the Grafx 16 to simply the Grafx. They removed the number 16 from the title of the system because by this point in time, having 16-bit graphics was nothing special. It was somewhat of the norm, so it made no sense to brag about 16-bit capabilities. So the system simply became known as the Grafx. Further on from this though, basically NEC crapped themselves after their lack of success in North America. So they took the high road and decided to tow it out of Europe. But along the way, they sold off all of their already manufactured units of Grafx 16s to a company known as Telegames. Then Telegames distributed many of the 200,000 units around the continent. Obviously 200,000 is not that many units when you consider the EU alone has around 720 million bloody people living in it. It's a big region, twice the size of the United States in terms of population, so that's a meager amount of units. Due to this, I never even heard about this system as a child. I wasn't even aware it existed until I was about 16 years old and started looking into gaming history a little bit. And even by that point, I wasn't aware there was a European release. I just knew about the American Grafx 16 and of course the Japanese PC Engine. It wasn't until quite recently, in fact, I heard about this European Grafx at all. Because, like I said, these things were pretty much non-existent. And from what I hear, because the Grafx was only released by Telegames, if you wanted to play games on it, you would have to import most of them from regions like, obviously, the United States and stuff like that. But obviously, do not quote me on this, because I do not yet own a Grafx, nor do I have any intention to anyway, because if I was to get a model of this system, I'd probably just opt for the PC Engine. Further on from this, even further, if that makes sense, I want to talk a little bit about a European PC Engine. And by that, I do not mean a Grafx. I actually mean the PC Engine model of the system itself, but released in Europe. believe it or not. We're going to look into this story slightly. But before I move on, if you want to learn even more about the TurboGrafx, which was made for Europe, I suggest you watch Kieran's video on the Laird's Lair YouTube channel, because he gives an in-depth 10-minute piece all about the history of the TurboGrafx in Europe. Today though, we're moving on to the PC Engine in Europe. First of all, there was somewhat of a grey market regarding the Japanese version of the PC Engine, where in companies like France, third-party companies were coming in and they was importing the devices and selling them with French manuals and stuff like that. However, recently, further from this, I have seen an image pop up in my Twitter feed, posted or at least retweeted by, I believe, the Retro Hunters, which is a really decent retro gaming store you can find in Southend, Essex, where you can always find a bargain or two. I would suggest all of my subscribers to perhaps visit there for your retro gaming needs. And this isn't a plug, it's generally a really great shop where I've made a lot of procurements from in the past in my collecting days. So anyway, he has posted this image of what seems to be a PAL PC Engine. So now we've just got to decide, well, not decide, there's not much information online regarding PAL versions of a PC Engine. And it makes you think, if there was a PAL TurboGrafx, why do you need a PAL PC Engine as well? Perhaps they were modded from NTSC at an earlier date in time, because if you look at the boxes, they do generally look like the Japanese ones, but they've got great big stickers on the front, which suggests that they're PAL, and they've got stickers with loads of English language information on them as well. So what exactly are these things? Where did they come from? Are they official? Are they unofficial? Who knows? But obviously the evidence points to them being unofficial. However, there is a small chance these things could have been legit and come from NEC themselves. There is often missing pieces of information when it comes to gaming history online. Not every little piece of data and information has been successfully collated. A great example of this regards to the Hong Kong releases of Nintendo products. I don't hear anyone really talk about the Hong Kong gaming market on YouTube. So we talk about the 8-bit era in Hong Kong for a moment. Hong Kong, during the Famicom and Nintendo Entertainment System's release, was still a good old-fashioned British colony. So there was still a lot of British influence at the time. But at the same time, this region is still over in the Far East. So believe it or not, there were 2 different systems released in that market for Nintendo during the 8-bit era. There is a PAL Hong Kong version of the Nintendo Entertainment System, just like we got a PAL Nintendo Entertainment System in Europe. But even more surprisingly and amusingly, I absolutely love this, in Hong Kong you can get a PAL Famicom. Like, how bloody cool is that? A PAL Famicom exists in the Hong Kong region. So bearing this in mind, who's to say there's not, for example, a PAL PC Engine which was released in Hong Kong, for example? Who knows, maybe these PAL PC Engines, which look to have been sold in England, didn't come from Hong Kong. I'm just speculating here completely. This is all speculation by this point. But looking at these pictures, there were PAL PC Engines. However, I'm yet to get to the bottom of what these actually were or how they came about. But an official PC Engine for the PAL region could really exist. As I said, there's a PAL Famicom, and I never hear anyone ever talk about PAL Famicoms. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me know in the comment section what you think of this story, and if you believe these PAL PC Engines to be the legitimate thing or not, or whether they are just some, I don't know, hacked devices made from just NTSC PC Engines and then sold by some dodgy third-party company. So, let us know in the comment section. I do hope today's video isn't too strange for you, but this subject has got me scratching my head a little bit. Also, if you've got a PAL Famicom, I'd still quite like to procure one of those. Sell me one. Yeah. Cheerio!